All right, welcome in everyone. UGA Football Live with JC Shelton and former Georgia tight end back again, Arthur Lynch. Man, we missed you a little bit the last couple of weeks. I know you're busy as all get out, and you missed a little bit of situations for the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, we entered that Tennessee week with a lot on the line. You know, we talked about it here, and unfortunately, I didn't have much of a voice at all. It's a little better now. And college football playoff implications on the line. Georgia has its first night game since early in the season, first ranked game in Sanford Stadium, I believe in 8 games, right? And from everything I heard from Georgia fans, the atmosphere was electric. Georgia walks in to Sanford, comes away with a 31-17 win over number 7 Tennessee. I just want to hear your thoughts on that, man. Just, the pressure going into that one and then how Georgia played on the field.
Yeah, I felt pretty good about the game going into it for a number of reasons. I think Kirby has done a very good job of motivating his team, particularly when their backs are against the wall, so to speak. I also just think, speaking like high level, right? I think Tennessee's a good football team. I think they've played poorly against Georgia in the past. Historically, that's like dating back to like Coach Rick years, right? And I just think that atmosphere, college game day, I think Carson Beck handles those situations really well. Bigger spotlight, right? He's a pretty cool, calm, collective individual. What I was concerned about going in, and I mentioned something on Twitter about this, was just like the first half was just a basically a perfect like summary of how the season was going, right? It was like guys who are supposed to make plays were not making plays despite Carson Beck putting them in the position to make plays. There was like one sequence of events where like we were fumbling the ball forward and then like kicking it down the field, and it happened like twice in like 10 minutes, and I was like, this is insane. Drop passes, defense was like playing fairly well, but offense was just putting them in a bad position. And the defense put them in a good enough position to where it wasn't like that game could have been 21-20-4 to like 7 or 0 at halftime. Like easy. And the defense played well as they typically do and put the offense in a position to make a comeback or at least put them in a better position going to half. And that's what happened. And then the second half was like, basically I saw the Georgia that I knew existed and that I knew, could, if, things went well and they got out of their own head and got out of their own way. And I'm thinking like strictly to the offense and strictly to the tight ends, the running backs and the receivers. That's the offense that Georgia like has the capability of being on a day-to-day basis. We saw it in the second half of Alabama, and everyone wants to put all the pressure on Carson Beck. And like, don't get me wrong, some of his mistakes have been pretty bad and his throws have been poor at times. But like, you also got to put yourself in his position. Like, he probably grows frustrated because guys probably make great plays during practice, and then he probably tries to go to those guys in the games, and they don't deliver. But what we saw on Saturday, something clicked really towards the end of the first half, but really that start of the second half, and we were like, oh, okay, this is an entirely different football team, and it was one that I enjoyed watching play, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly. And my mic just went out again. We're having
No, you're good. You're good, JC. Run with it. We can hear you fine.
Yeah, no, I've just switched it to my MacBook, so apologies for the audio quality here. But big things that stood out to me, and you're exactly right when you talk about kind of and I think Greg McElroy put it this way and summed up the Georgia team like a couple of weeks ago like this, and I love it, so I'm gonna run with it. Jekyll and Hyde type of team.
Yeah.
I really appreciate his analysis, but he's exactly right there. And, going into this game, I kind of learned my lesson a little bit from the Ole Miss game because we expected the best version of Georgia to show up there. And for one reason or the other, and you could point out several, that didn't happen. So going into this one, I was like, well, if the Georgia we know that exists, that we've seen a couple times this season, especially, second half Alabama and then Texas, of course, really the whole game, basically. If that version of Georgia shows up, I think it's a decisive win. Because, like you said, Tennessee's historic struggles, they've struggled on the road this season. And we talked a little bit about that in the show last week. It gets, at Arkansas, obviously lose that one, but then even at Oklahoma, just mistakes, Nico fumbling here and there not necessarily all his fault, just sack fumbles, some issues in protection when those teams really go after him because he is a redshirt freshman. Props to him. I think he played a really tough game. That kid is a gamer, taking big hits all game, 5 sacks, right? And he's still stuck in that pocket, baby, and gave Tennessee at least a little bit of a chance when the game was probably out of reach. And then that last fumble there, just protection issues. But what we saw was, and you mentioned defensively, Georgia kept everything in front of them. What was impressive to me already was Tennessee had one play of 20-plus yards, and it was a run. It was that touchdown early in the game. That was and I know Josh Heupel has kind of built this team into more of an SEC team, right? Because they started kind of with a gimmicky offense, a defense that has holes. They would win some games, but they lose the big ones. They've won a big game the last couple of years. They beat Alabama 2 years ago. They beat Alabama this year. And I think it's because they kind of built it into an SEC team where that defense is really good up front, really good. They don't get gashed by huge plays. Offensively, they run the stinking rock, right? They got a competent quarterback and then an offensive line who blocks pretty well at times. I think that's impressive for me from Josh Heupel in doing that, kind of, adapting to the conference he's playing in. But I think Georgia showed that they're not there just yet when it comes to line of scrimmage. They were really, really tested there. And that Georgia offensive line, they started Monroe Freeling, and they're at left tackle. Ernest Green's been battling some injuries, and he's been getting beat. So I think maybe we don't know what went into that decision, but I think I texted you earlier about it. That could play a part. Maybe they play better, and sure enough, they did. It was really a collective group effort. Ratledge is looking better off his injury. Then you have Jared Wilson had a great game. If you go back and look at the highlights from him, just pancaking guys all over the place, a center that can move like that's great. They played really well. And then the receivers, the first half, there were 3 or 4 drops in the first half alone. And Carson Beck started like 4 of 12. And I was like, there we go. Same story. I was like, Carson's making good decisions, right? He's missed a couple, but he's making good decisions. He's putting most of them where they can catch it, and they're just not making the plays. And then second half, they put a half together, baby. They put a half together. They were catching those balls. They were catching even more difficult balls. And that made the difference, man. And Carson Beck finished like in the second half, he went 12 of 13, I think, for almost 200, and then the 2 touchdowns. And then the rushing touchdown as well, using his feet. I think it's his. And I heard about this. Kirby Smart talked about this already, and I think it's really interesting. That he approached Carson Beck. I think Carson said this about kind of the offensive staff, Mike Bobo, Kirby Smart. They approached him and put in that wrinkle of a QB run, straight up QB run. He's going to fake the read and he's going to run it. And doing that just, added another wrinkle, man. It takes away a defender. I like it. And, I hate to see him get hurt, but he was tough enough. He threw a shoulder into a guy, and it really set up kind of momentum for that Georgia offense. I love to see more of that. And I think Georgia plans to use that more. It's a great time to put it in at the end of the season where they don't have much tape on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's 6'3.5", 230 pounds. He's not gonna get hurt. You know what I mean? He's not Stetson out there and not throwing a shot at Stetson. Stetson was tiny. You know what I mean? It comes down to this when people were like, oh, he's making bad throws. I was like, the bad throws look 10 times worse when the really good throws don't get caught, right? Like the first play of the game, he does a beautiful ball up the left sideline. I forgot who it was to, but it should have been a catch, right? That was the first play of the game, offensive play of the game for them. And like, if that if they convert on that, or if they complete that pass, it's like, the whole entire start of the game changes and the momentum switches like that. Instead, they drop it. They drop another pass, It's like basically a 3 and out. And, it's a bad start to the game, which is why, like, being crisp, and I'm not taking away responsibility from Carson Beck, but I am saying that, like, it's time that the offensive playmakers pick up the slack. I thought the tight ends did a great job. I thought the running backs played better, and I thought the wide receivers played better. I thought the offensive line played better. But they it's like it's a team sport. It's just a team sport. It's like guys got to make plays,
Yeah. And I think you hit it right on the head. I was about to go there, but the tight ends, man. I mean, Jurasek, who struggled early in the season, which makes sense. He joins the team late, and he's asked to be a big part of that, at least blocking scheme at first, but now he's catching more balls. Leads the team in receiving. Delp second there, 2 touchdowns. We hadn't talked much about Delp this season, entering as one of the best tight ends in the sport, we thought, but he played like that last week. That's huge. They got those guys involved. 5 and 5 in the red zone. Can't ask for anything better than that. 8 of 14 on third down. A lot of that is play calling and Carson Beck making the right decisions. So probably the best game that offense has put together. I think defensively, and we'll touch on this and we'll get into some CFP stuff soon because that's going to be fun. It allowed 167 through the air. Like we said, they kept explosives. There was 0 passing explosives for them. 146 on the ground, which when you look at, that was the best rushing offense in the SEC. 3.7 per carry. It's not the domination Kirby Smart wants to see, but that's good. They went 10 of 18 on third down, 6 tackle for loss, 5 sacks, man. And that's Smile Mondan getting him back in the middle linebacker room. He had a sack. Chaz Chambliss. Everybody wants to talk some stuff about Chaz Chambliss not setting the edge and all. What do you hear? 2 sacks. He was great in that role. Jalen Walker, another sack. KJ Bolden had a good game as well, and he's stinking true freshman. Great for their confidence. I think good for that defense to see that when they want to put pressure on and get to the backfield, they can do it. And that's the big thing about Georgia. They don't like to, they don't have to. But I think they felt they needed to get in Nico's face, and they did. So I was really impressed by that. Artie, now to the meat of the show.
Mm-hmm.
College football playoff, man. And I don't think we've gotten to talk about it since the first ones, at least me and you on here. So I'm just going to ask kind of a general one here for you. Do you have any particular problems? Let's say top 15, or if you want to go beyond that, you can. But anything you say, man, I don't know about that. What do you think?
I mean, to be honest, I don't, because this is just like, it's idiot. This is an idiotic like game theory at this point. Like, because Ohio State or Indiana are not going to be in their spots that they're in next week, right? I think they probably have Texas and Oregon right now. Notre Dame's too high. I'd probably you can't really put Georgia ahead of Alabama, but I'd at least put Georgia at 8, or at least I'd probably go 7, 8, 9 should be like Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, but they should probably be higher than that because I don't think Penn State should be above them, right? I don't think Notre Dame should be above them, so they should probably go like 5, 6, 7. But I mean, like, look, we live in a world from a media perspective where like we have to talk about something every single day. I mean, we're doing it right now, right? But like all week, it's been this like Big Ten versus SEC thing. Like, it's a cute conversation if you're in the Big Ten to be like, oh, but at the end of the day, it's like if the Big Ten was as good and as deep as the SEC, they would have the national championships to show for it, right? They have an Urban Meyer national championship, and they have a Jim Harbaugh national championship. And I think, if you want to go back 20 years, they have another Ohio State championship. But like, I'd say 80% of the national championships since 2005, right, have been SEC teams, right? And like, I basically claim that Clemson is an SEC team because it's in the Southeast. They just get an easier ride during the year. But like, for all intents and purposes, how that like the Clemson football apparatus is built like an SEC team, right? Like their donors, the organization, the administration, like it's a So
and during that period too, adding to your point, it only solidifies your point. It was before the transfer portal, which we know Dabo doesn't like to dabble in. So that talent he got in, he developed for years, most of them,
totally.
right? So that made them even stronger, and they've kind of had to, which,
yeah.
But anyways.
I'm with you 100%, right? But it's just like this idea of like, it's a cute conversation. It's like a football academic conversation. Oh, let's have this debate. But it's not, it's fundamentally not a debate. It's like Ohio State to me is the only legitimate program in the Big Ten. And I would say Oregon now is, but Oregon like is built or getting built like an SEC team in large part because Dan Lanning. And I had this conversation with my uncle this past weekend because we were talking about like, who's legit, who's not. And he was complaining about Indiana and Penn State being ranked high. And I was like, same. But this like theory or like conversation by Big Ten people or like Danny Cannell, I mean, Jesus, bless his heart. He's like, someone did something to him at some point in his life from the SEC that didn't sit well with him.
Yeah, they paid him.
Yeah. But it's just like, I can live with Oregon and Ohio State, and I think you probably can too, because they're proven commodities in the sport.
Yeah.
And if you just look at their NFL talent, it's across the field. But it's like, I bet you if Colorado played Penn State right now, Colorado would probably beat them.
They might, dude. I don't know who would be. That would be interesting to see who's favored where on a neutral field.
You know what I mean?
It had to be Colorado. I mean, they've played some tough teams in the Big 12. The Big 12 ain't up there. They're not up there as far as the top 10, whatever you want to say. But as far as everybody being competitive, they're more competitive than the Big 10. They just don't have the giants.
100%. Now, I actually think Indiana is a pretty good football team because I think that coach, like if you look at the track record of that coach, he just has won everywhere, right? And he was the wide receiver coach at Nick Saban when I was playing. I mean, he built JMU into like a legitimate program like that. They were 1AA, and then they were back-to-back undefeated seasons in 1A, right? But so I think they're very good. We'll find out how good this weekend, right? But the Penn State thing's a joke. Yeah. The Notre Dame thing's a joke. Miami, I know I'm higher on them than you, but like they should not be higher than Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee.
Yeah.
They just shouldn't, and they're probably going to lose to Clemson at the end of the year. So it's like
that would do some favors. That would do some favor for Georgia to get them a better, and we'll get into Georgia. But overall, Artie, I think the main gripe I'm seeing, and I've written about it the last, since they came out last night and today as well, from different opinions from the talking heads and kind of the gripes. But the biggest thing I'm seeing is just what the committee has said they're looking at. So people take that, okay, because that's the only thing. We're not in that room, it makes it so difficult. We don't know how they're evaluating. So they say, okay, strength of schedule, okay, common opponents, okay, your conference championship race, how do you look in there? How you look on the field, the eye test, which is 100% subjective, which I'm glad they have college football coaches in there. So people look at that and say, okay, with those metrics, your rankings don't make sense. And I have to agree with the people saying that because the contradictions are loud. When you get the Michigan AD on there trying it, which is a hard job. I'll go ahead and say that. I mean, representing the committee in front of millions of people and trying to explain why you ranked Miami ahead of Georgia based on what they've done on the field. How do you defend that? I mean, that's a tough, difficult job, brethren. My situation is, in the very boil it down to what we're looking at is the 12 best teams. We heard it in the four best teams. But the reality is it hasn't happened that way. And I think that's what gripes people because you saw it last year and it's an easy one for Georgia fans. And this is why Georgia fans, and they have a right, and Kirby Smart has a right when he talks about, he's the most outspoken coach at this time about these rankings. And I think he has a right, and Georgia fans have a right to be mad as well because of what happened last year, becoming the first number one team ever to be bounced out of the top four in the final week in the history of the playoff. Georgia fans are hesitant when they see a number 10 ranking after beating a number 7 team, move up just 2 spots. Alabama goes up 2 spots with beating Mercer. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And they're hesitant to where, okay, depending on how the SEC race plays out and these other conference race plays out, if a person that's maybe in the top 15 right now, let's say A&M, beats Texas at the end of the season, right? Texas goes on to win this championship. So Texas is up there. Where are they going to put A&M? And how does that affect Georgia? Kind of those things where Georgia could be looking in somehow, based on how they're looking and how they've ranked these teams so far. Because that's why it's just easy. I don't know. Artie, my biggest question is, man, I'd love to hear you on this. If we're getting the best teams in, then why even have to try and defend Indiana at number 5, Penn State at number 4, Miami and those teams? Put them in more defendable areas or places so you don't have to worry about it. Well, you can say, hey, well, this team played this strength of schedule. They did this on the road, like Georgia played Texas on the road, stuff like that. You know, why can't you just help yourself out a little bit is what I'm saying. Because they're basically saying, scheduling, weak schedules. I'm talking about beyond your conference, right? Indiana, they can't be blamed for not having to play Oregon or Penn State. Now, they do have an awesome opportunity against Ohio State, and that's huge for them. They can't be blamed for the conference, but they can't be blamed for the out-of-conference. All right? That is their job. They can control that. So, why are you gifting teams with an easier schedule? That sets a dangerous precedent for me, Artie, because you should reward strength of schedule. It should be reward yourself for playing really, really tough games on the road, at a conference, stuff like that. Because it sets a dangerous precedent because everything now going forward, you think Georgia's going to schedule Clemson and have that? No.
Well, I think a lot of the strength of schedule, though, is reflective of the weak conference of the Big Ten. Like, you could play as many here's the thing. You can play as many out-of-conference games as you want, but they're going to be a limited amount of slots as these mega conferences get bigger, right? I think the SEC, added another game. So it's like
it's still 8. Still 8.
Still 8? Okay.
But the Big Ten's 9, and based on how the schedule's going this year.
So that's going to change. Okay. Moving forward, it's going to be all conference schedules. It just is. Like, mark my words, they're going to bump this 12-team playoff. It's going to go to 16, and then it'll go to 24. It's going to happen.
Already, I like 16 because what do? Your top 2 out of your conference are automatic bids.
Right. But
that's how it should be.
It's going to expand. It's just like we can, and we'll debate that. It'll be a big thing. It'll podcast and people will yell about it. It's going to eventually look like a 1AA structure. It is. And people will be incentivized to play a harder schedule. And these cupcake games are going to go away. But we can't, when the cupcake game is a league rival, nothing you can do about it, right? And that's the Big Ten, right? Michigan State down, right? Michigan down. Minnesota average. Washington way down.
Way down. And here on that point, already way down. Washington's way down. They're 6-3, and that is the best. That is the only win on Indiana's record against a team with a winning record. If that makes sense.
And look, I'm not as mad about it, Indiana, because I know the type of coach that they have is a winner and has been a proven winner everywhere he's been. I'm more pissed about Penn State because this is the same song, different dance, right? The different dance is a new season, but we've played this over and over with Penn State.
Yeah.
They're going to go 10-2. It's a good football team. It's not a great football team. Franklin's a good coach. He's not a great coach. I'll never, talk super bad about Franklin because that dude won 9 games at Vanderbilt back-to-back years. That's unbelievable. But every single opportunity he has had to take the next step at Penn State, he has yet to do, right? And it's like, I love Coach Rick, close to my heart. Like, he took the next step a couple of times, but we never went over the hump, right? But it's like, this guy can't even get to that level, right? That I'm in the playoff or I'm in the top 4. It's always like, so I'm less mad about Indiana because being 10-0 under this coach makes sense if you look at this coach's history, right? Now they might lose the next 2 games and they'll be out of it and this conversation will be moot. Or they beat Ohio State, right? Okay, they're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Right? But like we're really going to put Penn State at 5? Like,
Yeah.
have we not
Four.
learned 4? Have we not learned anything? Right.
Yeah.
That's what really upsets me. Indiana doesn't upset me because, like, at the end of the day, they're undefeated, and then it's a Power 5 conference or whatever. I don't know the new names, but it's like they're undefeated in the Big Ten, so they should, until they lose, they should be in the top 4, right? Or top 5. That's kind of my thought process. The Penn State thing's insane. Like,
I like it. Yeah. If I had to put a tier, I would probably put Penn State because we don't get to see them actually put it on the field, right? Because they don't have anybody worth even talking about left. So Indiana, Ohio State, completely different story. We get to see this. The issue I think I would have if Indiana gets blown out and they still put them in. Yeah. Because Ohio State hasn't even been perfect. You know what I mean? They lose Oregon on the road, by the way, but we're kind of banking off those teams being really good and facing off against each other as the only really true test for them. Penn State, we don't have, and I'm with your point, their only top 25 win who just got added at the bottom of the poll in this week's rankings.
Illinois.
Yeah.
And my thing about the Penn State is, like, Notre Dame has a better track record than Penn State in the past 10 years with 2 different coaches. So it's like, you know, like I get no one likes Brian Kelly, but like the only time he ever lost and lost bad at Notre Dame was when he played really good Alabama teams or really good Clemson teams. Right. So it's like, no, like I'd rather put Notre Dame. I'd rather have Notre Dame at 4 than Penn State.
If they boat race Army, who's undefeated and has that gimmicky offense, if they just boat race them, I'm good. Put them in there. I don't think they're number 8 because they lost Northern Illinois and played one true road game.
Dude, they're number 6 right now.
They played one true road game. All right, that's also a gripe because we're going to put these boys in the playoff. Hold on, we're going to put these boys in the playoff race when they schedule their own games and they have only played one true road game. You got Georgia over here, the SEC teams over here, Big Ten teams even playing on the road. Ohio State playing at Oregon. You know what I mean? You don't get to see that with Notre Dame, which is just so not fair. That's just just bottom line.
But that's been that way with Notre Dame for a long time, and it has never been a factor when it came to rankings. So it's like I don't really allow that to like affect me. The thing that frustrates me about the Penn State is like we have seen this song and dance again. Like Notre Dame, like has put themselves in positions in the past. It's like, okay, they're a good football team. They're top 4. They're in the playoff. Or 2012, that was a good football team. They just happened to play, a team that was above, a different level in Alabama, right? But this Penn State thing's insane. Again, I'm high on Miami. They shouldn't be 8. They should not be 8.
No.
Right? If they're 8, why is SMU's in the ACC? Why is SMU 13? Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like Miami is 8 because they're Miami. That's just the name brand thing, which pisses, it's a whole different thing.
It is.
But anyway, that's kind of my thought process, right? Like BYU, Big 12, they're 9-1. Why are they 14? You know what I mean? I know they just lost, but anyway, that's kind of like, put it this way, if Texas was still in the Big 12 and was 9-1 and they had the same team BYU had, they'd be like 5.
Yeah, probably.
But people don't want to put BYU up there.
No, and then that's adds to the gripe because last week committee chair gets on and says, why is Texas so high with getting dominated by Georgia at home and not having to play anybody else except Vanderbilt? To this point, they play A&M at the end of the season.
Right.
Why? And then what his answer was? Has one of the best passing offenses.
Yeah,
they statistically do not. So if you're using that same metric, so one side of the ball can make us rank you in a certain area. Miami has one of the worst defenses in the top 25 teams.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst. That can't be, that's what it's just the issues there as far as being consistent and objective aren't. It's not fair, and I think that's what everybody gets upset. And last thing I'll leave you with, Georgia has as many top 15 wins as Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana, and Notre Dame combined. Just saying. All right. Let's talk Georgia SEC championship. And after that loss to Ole Miss, it was kind of like, okay, well, we're not going to Atlanta. We'll go to the playoff. If we beat Tennessee, we won't go to Atlanta.
Right.
There's a 5-way tie for second. There's a possibility there's going to be a 5-way tie for second. This is one of the possible areas. The other is a 6-way tie. In the latter scenario, which is probably the best for Georgia, there's a 5-way tie. In that scenario, either Texas or Texas A&M would be in, depending on that game at College Station.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alabama, they would be in at that point unless they lose to Oklahoma or Auburn. They lose one of those games, Georgia is going to be in. So there's still a chance. A lot of things need to happen. We've seen it before, though. And that Alabama-Auburn game, for those wondering, is at Bama. All right, so that fourth and Jalen Milroe situation we saw last year, which was crazy, that happened in Jordan-Hare. A little bit easier to take them down in Tuscaloosa. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the standings now. So basically, if Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia win out, they're going to play the winner of A&M and Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Okay.
If A&M and Texas stay perfect there.
Georgia, so let me rephrase. If Georgia and Tennessee or Alabama all win out, right, Alabama is going to play the winner of the two Texas. Okay, yeah.
Yes, that's from what I've researched. That's what I've got. Yeah, because like I said, I mean, how many times have we said, 5-way tie for second? I mean, that's just crazy.
And what was why is Ole Miss ranked so low in the rankings? Do we know?
In terms of
you
talking about the CFP rankings, or
no, in terms of the SEC standings? Because right now they're behind Bama,
Kentucky, LSU. Georgia's beaten Kentucky, and a few other teams have beaten Kentucky. I think that's the big thing for them. So and the LSU too. That drop off.
Got it.
So other teams, like several other teams, have beaten LSU.
Okay, so it's who
including
they lost
Bama.
To. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then obviously, it comes down to it, which I don't think it will, based on the rest of the slate for both two. Ole Miss wouldn't be in a position to get over for Georgia because of those losses, even though they have the tiebreaker.
Okay.
Yeah, it's odd, dude. This is what an initial season of this situation with no East and no West, and we're sitting here talking about 5-way ties on November 20th. Just incredible, man.
I know that the one thing that's gonna hurt in this new playoff is eventually, they're gonna get rid of the conference championship game, which is gonna stink. But
man.
There will be years where it will be like advantageous to have one, but I think just like strictly from like a probability perspective, more times than not, people will be like, I'd rather not play it, right?
Yeah.
And I think this year is going to be one of those years where they'd rather not play it. Now, if it's like two undefeated teams, or like, or like a undefeated one-loss team and they're playing for a bye, like then I think that's a different scenario. But
yeah, because they're in either way, most likely, right?
Yeah.
And Lane Kiffin, I wrote about this earlier today on the SEC teleconference, told a story about how he has talked to other SEC coaches.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the growing agreement, or at least they're on the same page here, is it might not be worth playing in Atlanta, because you think about it and it makes sense. Okay, I am Ole Miss sitting there at 9, and I got to play Texas in the SEC championship, a really, really tough team. No matter what you think about it, it's just a tough team to beat. And then you lose, you might get bounced out depending on how the other conference race and how the committee looks at you, which would be horrendous, because you could sit there and play, just take the championship weekend off and let, let's say Texas plays Bama. You're probably not going to drop much because you have that huge win over Georgia and you got 2 losses. They would almost be more inclined to put you in. And that's kind of the situation that Lane Kiffin's talking about. And he's getting some flack from Urban Meyer and basically saying, how could you even think I'm not going to wake up in the morning and want to play in the SEC championship? Well, that's why. That's why.
All right, Urban, relax, dude.
Yeah,
Urban
exactly.
would be, the guy. He loves to scheme. He'd be never mind.
Yeah.
I do think eventually, like, look, this is why I love college football, particularly like when it does change, because there is so much stuff going on and changing. Some of it I hate, some of it I like. I think the expanding the playoff I really like because it's the best. Like, I don't love basketball as a spectator, but I love March Madness because it's kind of insane, right? But I love college football. I love the fact that like this playoff, this like gamemanship, it's like crazy. It allows opportunities for like a Colorado or an SMU or Boise State to sneak in. Will they win? Probably not, but like they might. You know what I mean? And it's like, why not? Right? What I don't love is like, and where I think we're going to start seeing as these powers get consolidated and this alignment settles a bit because teams are where they're supposed to be, we're going to start seeing or getting this college football committee. There'll be a commissioner. Who that commissioner is, he currently sits on College Game Day, right? There's a reason why he left when he left and why he went to ESPN. ESPN has the rights to the college football playoff. You know what I mean? So, and I think once we start getting a governing body around the NCAA or around college football, not the NCAA, I think we're going to start seeing like, okay, the winner of the 3 major conferences or 4 major conferences gets an automatic bid, but it's not the regular season automatic bid, it's the championship game. So if like a 7-3 team somehow sneaks their way into the thing and they beat the undefeated team, they get the automatic bid, right? So I think that's like where we're going to make those games matter. But right now it's like we have like, that's why I love Lane Kiffin. He'll say things that people are thinking in his position, but won't say, and he just doesn't really care because he's at Ole Miss and has them winning 10 games a year, and that's never happened before in Ole Miss history. So he can basically do whatever he wants, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know. That's like a long-winded way of saying that, like, I don't mind the situation we're in because ultimately I think Penn State's going to lose again, probably. I think Notre Dame will probably lose again. And it's like there's going to be more SEC teams in the top 12 than there aren't. And everyone in the country will be pissed off. But guess what? The TV ratings of all of those games are going to break records, right?
Yeah.
Because people want to see good football. And it's better football if Ole Miss plays Oregon than if Oregon plays, God knows who, right? So that's my thought process. Sorry, I went on a rant.
Oh, good. I like your rants. I'm taking South Carolina over Penn State on a neutral field.
Oh, dude, same. By the way, what did that guy saved his job this year?
Yeah, Shea Beaver, dude.
Beaver?
That team plays so much differently than it did the first part of the season.
Yep.
I mean, Lenora Sellers is such a gamer. I mean, he runs the rock like Cam Newton, and everybody's hesitant to say it. He ain't that passer, but he can run the stinking rock like a huge guy too. Runs people over. That's and that pass rush, obviously.
Beamer's such a good recruiter, though. They have so much NFL talent that no one even like talks about.
And they lost a lot of guys in the transfer portal, a lot, and they still reloaded. Which, dude, awesome, impressive. You didn't have to play Bama, you did play Bama. You didn't have to play Georgia. Which is sad. I think Georgia fans wanted to play them for the first season. They kind of been on the up and up in a while. But all right, we'll end it there with this, Artie. Georgia plays UMass. I don't know if we knew that. They play UMass this Saturday. And
Minutemen, baby.
Minutemen. If you blink at 12:45 p.m. Eastern time, you might miss this. Georgia's a 42-point favorite. Total 56.5. UMass 2-8. Now they played 2 SEC teams. 45-3 versus Missouri, 45-20 most recently against Mississippi State. Mississippi State, the Bulldogs from Starkville, rushed for 241 yards and 5 touchdowns.
And they are bad.
They are pretty bad, folks. Run the rock, rest the starters, and get the young pup some snaps. That's what I'm saying, Artie. That's what I'm saying.
I think they put 50 on him.
They stinking should. The way the offensive line played last week, definitely. I would like to see, and this is just putting my coaching cap on, which Kirby Smart ain't gonna listen to, and he shouldn't. Trevor Etienne, questionable. He missed last week with the rib injury. Keep him out. Tate Ratledge, right? He's been playing hurt. Keep him out. Dylan Bell, ankle injury, not going to require surgery, which is huge for Georgia. They don't have many playmakers, and he's one of them. He should be doubtful for this one, but keep him out anyway. I don't care if he wants to go or not. Branson Robinson, he's been back at practice. I could see maybe him putting him back in to get some snaps under him if he's good to go because he's been out so long. And then Anthony Evans, Michael Morris, and Cass Jones, they all played last week, but I could see them maybe getting limited snaps as well. Just something to keep an eye out. But it should be a great one in Athens as far as a game experience because, riding the high off that Tennessee win is going to be fun for folks making that trip. And then Georgia Tech, which Georgia Tech's going to be a fun one to talk about, Artie, because of how they played Georgia last year. They beat Miami. They always play up to their opponents, it seems like. They only kind of lose the ones they should win, which is just kind of a rebuilding program, kind of the signs of it, aren't they? But we'll talk that through. What'd you say?
I like that coach at Tech.
Absolutely.
Slowly but surely, they're working their way up, and I think it's great for the state of Georgia if both those teams are good and competitive because it's just
Absolutely.
that is a great rivalry, and it becomes underrated, I guess is the best way to put it. When one team just isn't competitive, right? But I think the whole particularly Atlanta, but the state of Georgia, it's basically like the state of Georgia versus Atlanta almost in a way, and it's just like a really cool. It's a great college football rivalry, but when it's lopsided like it is, and it's been that way for a long time, it's just kind of you know what I mean? But when Georgia Tech is good enough to make it interesting, it's like that's a fun weekend, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely, dude. I'm with you 100%. You got clean old-fashioned hate
in
Sanford. Clean old-fashioned hate with some extra motivation for the Yellow Jackets here this year. 7:30 kick, too. I mean, that's going to be a night game in Sanford. It kind of creates a situation where Georgia Tech, man, they play their best ball. Georgia could be in a close scare. But we'll talk about that one. It's going to be a short week, too, Black Friday for Georgia. So that's even more of a reason for this Georgia staff to kind of sit some guys if they're nursing anything, I would think. But we'll get into that one when the time comes. But until then, Artie, it's been great, man. Have a great rest of your night, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
See you next week.